Still following that breaking news out of Brooklyn, New York, several people shot at a subway station.
Let's bring in retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Galliano. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, we're looking at live pictures and we're seeing, the area roped off with caution tape, a heavy police presence. Describe to us how difficult it is in a situation like this in real time to keep people safe and to make sure that the people that are around that area are safe.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for asking me to join. This has become all too real and happens far too often in major metropolitan cities across the globe. And look, New York City is a city of 8.4 million people, and it is an attractive and has long been an attractive spot for terrorists and for criminals. And look, we have to be really careful right now before we can state that absolutely this was a terrorist attack. There are a lot of motivations that could be at play here. This could be a domestic violence case. It could be somebody who has, workplace issues. There's a lot of different things to sort through, and police and law enforcement are dealing with this kind of in a vacuum. Now, we know 13 people are injured. We know that there were discovered some incendiary devices scattered about the location in the Brooklyn subway station, and we know some people were shot and injured. So police have a lot of work ahead of them right here, and I think it's important to put a fine point on this. Anytime an incident, something like this happens, you always assume terrorism and you work backwards from that. So you want to disprove that. This has all the classic markings of a terror attack, but before we can say that for sure, we've got to understand the motivations, and that's what police are looking to find out right now.
Yeah, obviously really important not to speculate on what this may be, but when you see those things like undetonated devices, you were saying incendiary. What are investigators looking at right now? What is their plan for this?
So understand what the components of a bomb, what a bomb does, and an incendiary device. And we've seen this across 20 years in the Middle East and in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, where U.S. military is deployed. Improvised explosive devices, things that you can build with simple household items. The problem with bombs, obviously, is they're a mass casualty device. They are a terror device. And also, when they go off, they tend to destroy the evidence. So it makes it very hard then to determine who exactly put it together and what the components were. Now, the FBI has special agent bomb technicians. The New York Police Department has a incredible bomb tech folks as well, and they will work on those. Now, the first thing that we have to do here is make sure that whoever did this is either captured, caught, or neutralized. And then you've also got to make sure that there were no co-conspirators on this. That is the number one thing right now that law enforcement wants to do. Then going back and piecing the crime together and figuring out how to prosecute the individual or individuals that participated in this are number two. But number one right now, the NYPD and the FBI, they want to make certain that this wasn't part of a larger diabolical plot.
Now, in the video that we're seeing when we had a more close-up shot, we're seeing police officers, obviously, but we're also seeing people in plain clothing. So I'm assuming people that live in that area, maybe we're walking through that area. For our viewers at home that are watching, I mean, your main message to people, if something like this happens where they live, what should they do? I know a lot of people have a lot of questions because this is happening, like I said, in real time.
Absolutely. And the FBI has trained the public over the course of the last decade or two that in an incident like this, you want to avoid the area. If you happen to be in the area when this happens, what you do and what we teach people, whether it's a mass shooter or whether or not it's a terror attack, is run, hide, fight, and then share information with the police after that. So the first thing is just get out of the area if you can. Obviously, number two, if you can hide, if it's an incident where this is an active shooter or somebody looking to ratchet up mass casualty situation, do that. And lastly, fight if you have to. But most important to this also is to tell law enforcement what you saw. Again, law enforcement is responding to this. They're operating in a vacuum. And oftentimes, whether it's in war, whether it's in incidents like this, the truth and the actual facts and details kind of get muddled up in early reporting. So we want to be real careful not to put out any information that can confuse people, send them to the wrong area, or send police on a goose chase as well.
What are the next steps in the investigation? I'm just looking at some of these images on Twitter. Obviously, we don't want to share yet because they're unconfirmed, but some of them are coming from outlets in New York City. Obviously, we hope for the safety of everyone that was not hurt or injured in this, and we'll bring you up-to-date information when we get it. But the plan of attack for investigating this, what is the strategy? What are investigators combing through right now? Are they looking at shrapnel? Are they looking at things that might have gone off? Or these devices were undetonated, but what are they looking at is what I'm asking.
Well, the sequence, there's 3 steps. The first is crisis resolution. That means we have to stop the bad actor or actors. That is number 1. So once police and law enforcement determine it was 1 person or 2 people or 5 people and that there is no immediate threat to the area, then you move on to consequence management, and that could be dealing with a fire, dealing with the explosives that need to be safely disengaged or detonated a safe distance away. Lastly is the investigative piece. So crisis resolution, consequence management, and then the investigation. Now, the investigation can be ongoing, and some of the things that I'm seeing as I'm looking through the feed right now, the live feed that we're sharing here is, just the kind of casual demeanor and the way that law enforcement is standing and operating right now. It appears to me, as I divine the investigative tea leaves here, is that they appear to have the central threat neutralized. So now what they'll do is
go ahead. I was going to say, as far as it being on the subway system, this is the largest subway system in the country. What happens to public transit right now?
Sure. Well, obviously, trains have got to be diverted away from that area. So this is going to be shut down. You're going to be treating the wounded, the casualties that are on scene there, moving them into a hospital or moving them away from the area. You're going to cordon the area off, too, as well, because you don't want to muddle up or step all over a crime scene. New York City has miles and miles and miles of labyrinthian subway. So they're going to obviously block this off. That'll disrupt transportation in that area until they can get an establishment that there's an all clear, that it's safe, and that they've collected the evidence they need to prosecute the person or people involved.
Now, in a situation like this, I mean, you perfectly describe the subway system as a labyrinth, because that's exactly what it was. Anybody that has been to New York City knows just how chaotic almost it can be. And is there any concern, do you think, in a situation like this, that something like this, there could be a second situation on another subway system?
Well, absolutely. You've got to look at somebody that might have done something to distract law enforcement from another area as well. Now, look, the New York City Police Department has 36,000 police officers, so they definitely have the resources. Another thing that's important to note here is, and what makes New York City such a target for terrorists and for criminals, there are 8.4 million residents in the 5 boroughs.
Wow.
On an average commuting day, and this happened at the height of rush hour, an average commuting day, there could be 1.2 to 1.5 million more visitors or workers to New York City. So at this time, it looks like this was set up to design maximum carnage. You wanted to do it in a place where there was public transportation and at a peak hours where people were traveling throughout the 5 boroughs.
Wow.
Again, to our viewers just joining us, we are following this breaking news out of New York City. At least 5 people shot, 13 people injured in a shooting, or shots were fired in a subway station in Brooklyn. This happened just out, obviously Brooklyn, just off of Manhattan Island, so not the main island, but the borough of Brooklyn. No active explosive devices were found, and the NYPD is urging residents to avoid the area. We will continue monitoring this scene, and we'll take a quick break.